Hello and welcome to another episode of Property-Pxrn Stars, a premium property podcast, brought to you by your host, singular today, David, because Matt can't join us. But I am joined by a very special guest, Ross Daniello from Chartwell Noble. Ross, thank you so much for being here.
More than welcome. Thank you for asking me.
And when I say here, we're in a different location, which is actually a surprisingly relevant location. So we're not in our usual studio today. We're actually, for those that are watching, not listening, we're actually on the first floor above a pub in London, which I didn't quite realise how relevant that is to you in every sense. And I suppose taking that on from there, I was amazed to find, being the most countrified agent that I know, that you're actually born and bred in London.
Yes, very nice. Well, not bred, but born.
Born, okay. Yeah. We'll split the difference there and call it born.
They extracted me early.
Straight in and straight out. And also, before your career in agency, you were involved in the pub trade as well?
Yeah.
So do you want to start us there and talk to us how you got from there and all the way through to where you are now with being the CEO and co-founder of Chartwell Noble?
Yeah, sure. So firstly, thank you for asking me to come down. It's a hell of a long way for us country bumpkins.
Yeah, well, it is, and there's no towpath for me to throw you in either, so you're quite safe.
Yeah. So I've been in and out of property in various guises for quite a long while, but I started I grew up in catering, so I started sort of my working journey in the sort of hospitality world, really. But then I ended up, I had a degree in real estate, which I sort of fell into through clearing, as I think everybody on the course did, because we certainly didn't, it wasn't the sort of academic cream of the crop that was on the course. Some of them might disagree, but we went on to get a degree in real estate. I ended up joining a company called Christie & Co, which is a business agent for things like licensed premises, so pubs, restaurants, etc. So it kind of made sense, property versus hospitality. Yeah. Wasn't my journey. Ended up in the telecoms world. Did well there. Sort of found my feet for a few years, but it was intense. Paid extremely well. Excuse me. Paid extremely well, but they wanted their pound of flesh, which I was prepared to give in my early 20s. Mid-20s, but then I came to a stage where I wanted to buy a flat in London. I was living in London, having moved there after uni, and that wasn't going to happen. It was just too expensive. I was renting like everybody else was. Yeah. So I wanted to go on the property ladder, and discovered actually it was easier to buy a pub that came with a job, free food and drink, a really nice part of town. So it was on the King's Road in Fulham. I got everything I wanted. So I got a job and a flat all at the same time. So
wow.
It seemed like a good idea. And on the surface it looked great. It was close to a football ground and Chelsea's home ground at Stamford Bridge, and it was always busy. Yeah. But it was 5 years that I would rather have not done.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Why?
absolutely. Yeah, well, it's intense. It's I'm not afraid of hard work, but the sort of 5 a.m. deliveries and the sort of 1 a.m. finishes. And the not letting up in between is quite hard work. But you don't give yourself a break in that world. It's not like the world we're in now, which is, being a business owner, you're not exactly 9 to 5, are you? But that is 24/7. You live above the shop. Nobody ever lets you alone or leaves you alone. And you're not a sitting target, but there's no escape. Everybody knows where you live, and everybody wants to come and pay you a visit, and so there was no peace and no let up. And I think I managed to sneak the odd day off every couple of months, but other than that, it was relentless drive, and it wasn't profitable. You're never going to make money doing that. It was a nice lifestyle. It was a fantastic lifestyle. Great location and all the rest of it. But so I after sort of 5-ish years, sold the pub. Did slightly better than broke even, and went back up to the Midlands and escaped London again. Finally, there was like a gravitational pull that pulled me back, and then I was able to get back out of the pull again.
Yeah, so I think London. A lot of people have a similar experience of London. Certainly loads of people that I know, and I'm one of these people as well. I did 10 years in London and came back out again. Exactly the same story. Yeah, different story, but the same timing and location as you in London, and then back out of London again to the place you came from. Yeah. So what did you do after that?
So I went back home and I thought, well, what can I do that I know? Property. Yeah, I can do that. And I thought, well, who's one of the most well-known and best estate agents in the area? Andrew Grant. Right, I'll go to Andrew Grant and I'll see if they've got, oh, brilliant, they've got a job. Country Homes Department. Well, I can talk the talk, and I've grown up in the world where there's more fields than there are houses.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, that's perfect. So I went and met with them, and had an interview with them, and I just clicked. I thought, wow, this is great. I thought I can do that. Looks really easy. Which I was quickly re-educated as to the fact that it really wasn't.
Yeah.
I spent a couple of years there. Wanted to get into a different environment. I ended up going to a small rural practice, which was quite niche in being proper country homes and rural estate agency, farms and such like. And then ended up going to a sort of regional player called Knockdyton, which was when I was head of country homes there, and then went on to be sales director. So a bit of a potted sort of journey, or history of the journey, really.
Were Knockdyton doing country homes before you came, or did you start that kind of division in the business?
So it was always known as an entity that had that in its arsenal.
Yeah.
There was traditionally the business was an agricultural business anyway. It was livestock, it was small holdings and agricultural holdings and what have you. And then the estate agency was grown by the current owner's late father, who turned the estate agency side of it into quite a big entity. And did a grand job there. I think it was back in the 90s, I think. Mm-hmm. And we, as a business, it was doing very, very well. The agricultural arm split off from the estate agency arm. They were two separate businesses, called the same thing, but two separate businesses. And the one half complemented the other, but they didn't benefit each other in terms of the fact that there was no sharing of business there. So if the agricultural arm listed something, the estate agency didn't have anything to do with it, and vice versa.
Right. Okay.
So because they weren't connected businesses at all, only in name. So what the owner of the business said was, we want to penetrate the upper quartile. We want to get into that market. We flirt with it. We do £1 million-ish every now and again, but our core market is 500 to 700 across the whole of the patch, so the whole of Shropshire and North Herefordshire. So he said, let's build something that looks like sounds like a department that could actually take the fight to the upper quartile, go against the Stratton Parkers and the the sort of higher value brand, or the higher sort of target market. So we did that, and it went very well. And we grew it, and we really drilled down and targeted, and we exploited the specialism of the role and the knowledge, and built that. And within a few months, we were up to like over 10 properties that are over £1 million, which was unheard of for us as a business.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And then we sort of built out from there, and we were selling in no time at all small holdings of sort of 50 acres and large country houses and that sort of thing. So, and then I was brought on to be sales director from that to try and sprinkle a bit of that magic of growth and sort of diversification, and not in what we did, but in terms of the market. Yeah. And to elevate and push and grow things, really, but add a bit of a different spin to it. So and did that for 8 years in total. So
fantastic.
Yeah, it's it was good. It was successful. We did very well out of it.
Yeah.
Nice journey, actually.
Yeah, I bet. So you left Knockdyton and started Chartwell Noble. Talk to us about that journey.
So three of us, the founders of Chartwell Noble. So there's myself.
Were you all from Knockdyton?
No.
Okay.
No. So Stuart, we've all done a little bit of let's call it service at Andrew Grant in the old days. Yeah. I was there, my first job back up in the Midlands after leaving London. Stuart had been there, I think he joined there a little bit before I had been there for, I think it was sort of 10 years or so.
Right, okay.
And George had been there for about 8 years. He was a partner. But when I was there, George was at Knight Frank. Stuart's been to Spicer Heart and Chances in the meantime, to sort of try and experience that world, see what that was like, see what he could learn out of it. And obviously, so we'd all sort of moved in the similar circles, in the sort of almost the same ecosystem, if you like, in similar market. And we all knew each other really, really well. And Stuart and I, Stuart is a very close friend of mine, godfather to my daughter, so we're extremely close. And George, I'd always got on really well with George, and he and Stuart always clicked really, really well. They worked well together. So when I first proposed to Stuart that we have a chat about finally doing the thing we've been talking about for so many years, which was always like a pint and wouldn't it be nice?
Yeah.
We did it our way.
Yeah.
When I finally persuaded him that we should have this conversation with meaning, and put some meat on the bones, I said, I think we should have a chat with George, because he's bloody good at what he does, and we always get on really, really well with him. And I'm spoken to him for a while, and I know things aren't great where he is at the moment, so let's just have a nice. So I went for a pint with him, and I sort of floated the idea, and he sort of stared at me for a little bit and said, "Well, this isn't the end of the conversation, but it's definitely the beginning." And then I think we had about 6-9 months of floating the idea, going around in circles a lot in terms of what we were going to do, how we were going to do it. We were going to go after core market. We were going to drill down on the specialist knowledge that we've got, and we spent a lot of time talking to people who really know their stuff about what their thoughts were. So we didn't just sit there and go, lads have got an idea. Let's take over the world and come up with some crazy harebrained scheme to do something daft. We drilled down on a lot of what we know, and we built a proposition. We ran the business plan past a lot of people. Initially, we weren't going to start our own business. We were going to bring Jackson Stops in as a license to the territory, because nobody was covering Worcestershire, Herefordshire, Shropshire, West Midlands, down to Bristol, M4 corridor. Nobody was doing that at the time. We thought, look, we sniffed an opportunity here, because this is a great brand, lovely legacy, beautifully presented. Love their values, love everything about Jackson Stops. But we changed our mind because we didn't want the restriction on territory, because we were very respectful of the fact that there are existing business owners within Jackson Stops, so we could only go so far. So we threw it around a lot. It was hard to walk away from that, because we really loved it, and we built an awful lot of our future in our heads, and we could see it. But then we had a very open chat and said, what if we did build our own? I mean, Christ, it'd take a hell of a lot of work, and this is ready to go. This is sat here. I'm here. Choose me, pick me up, and run. And we thought, well, no, let's play with it. So we spent some time building the brand, building the idea, and then Chartwell Noble was born, really, and it developed into what it is.
I was going to say, what is Chartwell Noble? I don't mean that in terms of a brand. I think we sort of covered that a bit when we were talking about brand names and stuff along the towpath we did together. But for those people that are listening that don't know what Chartwell Noble is as an agency, what is it and who is it for?
It's essentially two businesses. So we have our core business, if you like, which is the estate agency business that we have in Worcestershire. There's a team of 7 sat in Worcestershire who sell houses in the upper quartile. And that market has historically been dominated by 2 or 3 agents. That landscape has changed significantly in recent years. There's been a breach that we wanted to step into, so we've decided to do that. Again, using the new brand and being the new kids on the block. Which has worked really, really well for us, thankfully. But we attack the upper end of the market, the upper quartile, and best in class. So where we have got £500,000 properties, they are stunning chocolate box style properties that fit well within our marketing scheme. So we wanted to not just sell houses. That's actually not what we wanted to do. We removed ourselves entirely from the world of estate agency for 3 months and said, what does good look like? What is missing in this market in Worcestershire? No, not just Worcestershire, but elsewhere. And we sat down and we pulled it apart about what the user journey could be, what the vendor journey could be, what the whole experience could be, what the vendor journey, the buyer journey. We just ripped everything up and we started again. So we built a proposition that we knew nobody else was doing, that nobody else would be able to do quickly to catch up with us, so we could stay ahead of the curve, and would look so slick that people couldn't ignore it. So we're quite proud of what we built. That's the estate agency. And then we always had this vision that whatever we build, we want to scale it, and we want to scale it quickly. And we want to do it sensibly and wisely and in a sort of measured way. And that's the beauty of having the three of us, is that we can still do estate agencying, as we call it, but at the same time we can also focus on the business development angle. So the second business is the scaled business, where we sell it out to self-employed agents.
So are you, in your role, are you doing a bit of both? Are you selling houses and building, or have you had to sort of...
Up until yesterday, I haven't been to a house for a while.
There you go, breaking news.
Breaking news. And
exclusive property porn stars.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm not officially back on the front line, but no, look, if somebody knows me and wants to get me involved, then yeah, of course I'm going to get involved. But no, George is almost like our partner agent for Worcestershire, with support with Stuart. So George is frontline, very heavily frontline. He's in charge of all business development, all revenue. So he's our CRO, Chief Revenue Officer. He is in charge of all revenue streams that come through that office and elsewhere. Stuart is operations, so he handles all the compliance and he makes sure that it is a smooth running machine. For me, it's marketing and it's the scaling of the business, it's the growth, it's the business development. So we all have our different roles. But no, I do go on the front line, not so much anywhere near as much as I used to. I haven't got time. We're too busy doing other things. But yes, we do have George purely focused on working with Matt, Ella, Stuart and Sarah, who's our head of new homes, in getting that market.
Makes sense.
Attacked in Worcestershire.
So this sounds like a really flippant, stupid question, but I promise you it's going somewhere. For people who are listening to this and don't have the pleasure of watching us here, tell them what you're wearing and what a schoffel is, for those that don't know.
So it's a gilet.
Okay.
It's a sleeveless fleece. There you go. So
it's a sleeveless fleece, and that sounds like, why on earth am I bringing that up?
I need to get sponsorship from Schoffel.
yeah. So schoffels are interesting because I got a friend of mine who's a farmer and he wears a schoffel all the time, and we joke that he's like a turtle in a shell, that he can't take it off, he'll die. And it's, funnily enough, I know it's a weird thing to say, but it's such a, I can't think of the words for this, but that particular item of clothing is such an identifier of something that I can't quite put my words on, put words to as well. It's people that wear schoffels are certain types of people, if that makes sense. And I don't mean that in either a derogatory or a complimentary way, but it's such a...
If you pause that at the right moment.
yeah, there's the soundbite that I'll get in trouble for. We've got plenty of those. But it's such an identifier for something. And it's usually around that sort of high-end countryside living world, something like that. If you went to a country fair of some kind, or I'm making it up, Horse of the Year show or something like that, you're probably going to see a disproportionately
large amount.
But more people.
There'll be a stand there for Schoffel, let's be honest.
Put it that way. But the reason I bring that up is because, and there was a photo, I think, of you three guys, and you're all in your schoffels. I was like, it's clearly, to my eye anyway, a clear marker of how you have identified your niche market very, very clearly. And I think that you have done that very, very clearly. So the people that, almost this is what you want, but the majority of customers won't resonate with you, but the ones that do will resonate with you really strongly, because it's one of those signals, I guess is probably the best expression I could do, that these are my type of people.
Type thing,
that we're on the same wavelength about stuff in general. And so just talk to me about what a Chartwell Noble customer is, I suppose, and leading on from the schoffel is that signal of who we're talking to, and I suppose why that market as well.
Yeah, okay. So a Chartwell Noble customer, in the early days, it'd be anybody who'd be willing to instruct us.
You've got a house.
We were quite open. We were quite comfortable. So I mean, the ideal scenario is everything from upper quartile, whatever that looks like, and are we talking properties that are neo-Georgian, with 3 acres and nice big posh car outside and easily commutable into the centre of Birmingham. Yeah, it's probably that. We can do that. We can take the schoffel off and wear a blazer. So, every now and again. Not too
it's
often,
uncomfortable
though.
As it feels.
Yeah, we fidget a lot in the city. But the I suppose really what our comfort zone is always going to be those who are comfortable in a rural community.
Yeah.
The rural
That's
community,
a good way of putting it.
Yeah, it is a very underserviced community by those who know the community. There are a lot of people who want to service it who know nothing about the community, the challenges they face, the details of the properties. There's so much to it. It's everyone thinks that estate agency and property is one size fits all. It's a property. I can sell it. I can do this. I can do that. I can market it. If we go to an equestrian property, right, which is we do a lot of, you don't have an equestrian property that is a one size fits all for people who like horses. Do they like dressage or cross country? Is it, there are so many different types of equestrian properties. What sort of stables are they after? What sort of an arena do they want? What menage do they want?
Yeah.
We were talking about this off
Just to
camera.
pick up on that point off air, so will you just share the screen grab that you showed me just before we press record?
Yeah. So I think it was, let's call it one of the national brands that services a lower core market. Yeah. And it was in the Farmer's Guardian. It was a screenshot of someone had picked up an advert that had said that the property came with a horse house. I mean, it's like, come on. Yeah. Even like my 7-year-old daughter, she's into horses, of course, but kids know that a horse house is a stable. A horse house is something Americans call a stable. But in this country, we need to be a little bit more, aware. And if you go to a property and they've got 4 stables, 3 horses, an arena, 10 acres, a cottage that's maybe 3 bedrooms, beautiful location, you're looking and going, well, hang on, the balance here is in favour of the horses.
Yes.
So
I'm the furthest thing from an expert on this subject at all. I don't particularly like horses, but it's amazing. Two things. One is that people that are in that market, the property is for the horse first and the human second.
Very often.
And the second thing is, just come back to your point there. I mean, how much of an affront calling it a horse house, whatever it was, will be to those customers is weirdly hard to measure. So in my previous role, we used to advertise in the paper, in the national papers, and someone had written an advert and they'd said about that this property came with a manege, and somehow or another the accent in the word manege was the wrong one. It wasn't an acute, it was an aggrave or whatever it is. So for me, I'd look at that, I wouldn't know the difference, but they were so affronted by this that they took the time to write a letter and post it to our head office and say, you don't know what you're talking about because you don't know what this is. That's how particular they are about people knowing that specialist market, I suppose.
It's very much a hobby, but it's also a passion for these people. So you've got to get it right, and you've got to respect that. And I think if you just turn up to something that's got a couple of acres and a loose box, and you go, oh, that's nice. Yeah, it's lovely that. It's where your horse lives, isn't it? That's lovely. Yeah. Would you put like hay and stuff in there? That's lovely that. And you don't know about bridle ways, and you don't know about the fact that what the rules on boundaries are and all this sort of stuff, and keep livestock fencing and all the rest of it. If you don't know these things, you'll get found out, because what you have to remember is that you're not just selling it on behalf of somebody who wants to know that you know what you're talking about. When somebody comes to buy it, they know what they're talking about, and they're going to ask you questions that if you don't know the answers to, you're going to get found out that way as well. And you're serving us a niche market in that we're talking equestrians here, but you're serving a niche market, and there's obviously the agricultural element as well. Yeah, there's all kinds of nuances and things to trip you up in that world, but that's a part of what we do.
So on this then, be agricultural, be equestrian, you've just, to take your words there's lots that can trip you up on it. It's difficult, you need a load of specialist knowledge, so why do you do it?
Why do we do it?
Yeah, why do you focus on that market?
Because we've spent so many years doing it, and very few other people know it. So yeah, you've got to pick a niche, and the Seth Godin purple cow, and you've got to stand out in your field, haven't you, literally, and in our instance. So yeah, you've got to do what you do best, and become the absolute best at what you are. And where you've got Stuart, who's just a simply amazing estate agent, and you've got George, who, I mean, it drives you mad driving around the countryside with George, because it's sold that, ridden there, done this. There's not a house he has. It's typical estate agency territory, but his are just spread over a much wider area because of the nature of the world we're in. And then with my experience of been in country homes departments and markets for years, you know, there's few people that can combine their expertise in the way that we have and compete with us. Now, there are all kinds of agencies in our patch and wider afield that have got that skill set and discipline in their office. Of course there are. We're not sitting there saying we're the best. But what we are saying is that we're able to combine our skills and our knowledge and modern tech and we can, you know, our specific niche is actually quite old-fashioned because they tend to deal with a very traditional market in a very traditional way, and they've just discovered video and, you know, all that sort of stuff. So we're leagues ahead of other people in terms of how we do this proposition. But we do it because it's our comfort zone. And frankly, if you put me in a 2-bedroom flat, I'm not winning that business. I'm just not, even if I turn up in a suit, you know.
And I suppose, to ask you this question as well, in terms of the why and pinning the tail on the donkey, or the horse, but pinning the tail on the donkey. So Simon Ledbetter's Voice of the Age survey measured hundreds, I think he's up to over 1,000, last one that just went by, talking about property values and fees as you go up the market. And it seems to exponentially rise from an average of, say, 1 to 1.1, something like that in the volume market, up to 1.4, 1.6, up to 2, and then on from there as you go further up the market. Is that the case for you? And also, is that I'm assuming it's kind of part of the why you're in that market as well, because it is so lucrative. I mean, certainly, you know, from our point of view by design, running a business, and that's what is exciting for our licensees, is being in that market with big properties, big fees. Is that the case for you as well?
It's exciting, isn't it? Yeah. It's you know, when you're turning up to these big houses and you're pulling up the drive and you think you know what it is, but when you get there and you pull up the drive and you see this absolute monster of a house, you're like, wow, this is going to be fun. You know, he doesn't get a buzz out of that. That's amazing. But so I suppose really what attracted us to that end of the market in that regard is look, we wanted to do it right. There are lots of agents out there who don't have the luxury of time. They can't afford the time because, frankly, we all know that you know there are all kinds of things that are pinching us from a cost perspective, and fees are always a challenge. Now, yes, the higher up in the price brackets you go, the higher the fees are percentage-wise and then proportionately. So of course that's attractive, but we don't deal with as many properties as a high street branch, you know, 30, 40, 50 properties. You know, we don't have that. We limit what we do. We take it back deliberately. Now there's a critical mass point, but there's also a sort of a shortening of that where you've got to make sure that you don't have too few, especially with the world at the moment with timescales of turnaround in legals and the complexities of the properties we deal with. But for us, our average fee is up to about 15,000, and that starts around there really. I mean, we've got fees coming in that are, you know, I mean, they can knock on the door of 6 figures if you get it right with the right style of property, and that is what we're building deliberately to be. We specialise in this niche. We offer this proposition. We charge this fee, and we're not going to compromise on that. But it becomes a no-brainer as to why you would instruct us on that basis, because we are not just house floggers. We are people who have a very, very deep knowledge of a very specific type of property. And that, for us, is vital. And we put that out there. We make that known. We don't just know the market. Of course we know the market. You know, we can go and get stats galore, or we can ask people all we like. But this is about specific issues that relate to those properties, planning-related issues, right-of-way and easements, you know, all of the sort of the intricacies and the nuances of those of that market we're familiar with, and we ensure that those who join us as partner agents, they have that knowledge at their disposal as well. So whilst we want and expect them to have a basic knowledge of that, we will actually fill a lot of the gaps in their knowledge. So they've got to be decent agents, they've got to have a proven track record, but we can actually give them a core level of understanding or an additional level of understanding of what that market requires or needs.
So something that we talked about, which is on the bigger picture of this subject as well, when we did the along the towpath conversation, was something that I kind of just seen in the last week or two prior to that conversation, which I thought was really interesting, was that the the top 10 household brands in the UK for premium properties over £750,000, all 10 of them had lost market share, all of them. It wasn't that one of them was picking everything up and had a load of money pumped into it or something like that. They were all being eroded by smaller, newer companies that were coming and taking their market away from them. And it kind of leads me on to something that gets said a lot. And I hope to a degree that this conversation is proof positive of that competition happens at the bottom and collaboration happens at the top. And I think that's a very true statement, and you could squint your eyes and look at Chartwell Noble and look at By Design and say, oh, these are targeting the same people in every sense, from how we grow the businesses, but also the customers as well. I kind of don't really think so. I know that then you have to start really looking at it quite in some detail, but I don't think that is the case. And I think that's a positive thing that it isn't the case as well, because it means that those two target markets are actually clearly defined, and what will be right for one person will be wrong for another. And so when we're talking about this, even if we were competitors, someone said this to me last week, and I thought that is the right mindset, is even if we were chasing after the same stuff, I still don't think that we should see one another as competitors. All right, if there's such a time we happen to go up on evaluation together, whatever, that's just the sport of it. But really, and the person that said it to me, I was like, that's 100% right. He said, no, he was in a completely different business as well, in the premium market. And he said, no, we are competing against the established names. It's us versus the ones that have been around for hundreds of years, that are the household names that everybody knows. That's who we're competing against. We're actually on the same team to disrupt that status quo. And I thought, I totally buy that. I think that's right. What do you think?
I completely agree. And I think what's really, it's fun, isn't it? It's lovely because we've got this ability. Yeah, we don't have £10 million worth of marketing budget behind us. Yeah. But we've got a willingness to experiment and try and get things wrong. We're prepared to get things wrong, and I think that's really important in terms of that. Yeah. How we approach our marketing. Yeah. And not on behalf of a client, naturally, we always want to get that right. But I suppose really, no, I don't see Chartwell Noble and By Design as competition in the traditional sense, because I think I've always liked the fact that what the By Design brand does and what the Chartwell Noble brand does is it sort of approaches a very similar market from two different perspectives. And I really like that. And I think it's the culture that ultimately sets us apart from the traditional brands. We don't look down our nose at anyone, and there is now like an awakening happening in my mind, be it from client side or from those within those companies, where they're starting to look and go, do you know what? It's not all about these companies. It's not all about this brand. It's good, and they've looked after me well. But I've had conversations, as I'm sure you have, with agents that are within those businesses who they're just completely disillusioned. Like, I'm looking on LinkedIn and I'm seeing all these people parade themselves around these beautiful houses, and I'm not allowed to do that. So how valued am I as an individual? Yeah. And how, I've got a lot to offer here, but actually all I'm doing is I'm peddling a brand. Yeah. Whereas actually, if I could be supported by a brand and it's me personally that's doing the business, because actually, let's be perfectly honest, boys and girls, it's my contacts list, it's how I answer the phone. My bloody mobile phone rings a damn sight more than the office. Yeah. I've got a WhatsApp group of people that I sit there and go, right, new house on the market, £3 million. Let me know if you want to go and see it before it comes to the market. And I've got two people going around it. Yeah. It's not the brand that's done the job, it's you as an individual. And I think that's where the difference is starting to come now. And I think very soon, homeowners will feel that, because they'll start to see that brands like By Design and Chartwell Noble will be pulling off some epic wins. And do you know what? I'm going to PR the bloody life out of it. And I'm going to make sure that everybody knows about it. Because I want those agents who are exceptional agents in very recognisable and extremely average brands to look at us and go, do you know what? That's what I want. That's where I want to be. That's how I want to play.
It's a really, really, this is sort of my favourite thing at the minute, is to pick up on some of the things you said there. First of all, to go through this relatively quickly, I think that the rise of the personal brand is great. I think the sweet spot is to have the personal brand first, backed up by a compelling, trustworthy, impressive business brand.
100%.
That's the sweet spot, and I think that's what gives vendors everything that they want.
Yep.
Is the first thing. The second thing is that I suppose that is, I think, a big part of that erosion from those big household names is actually is a lot to do with that. Certainly, that's how it starts anyway, because.
Yep.
Understandably, and this is maybe something we talked about, I can't actually remember, but the bigger brands have to have a lot more restrictions on what they allow their team members to do, especially on socials. Now, that whole world is moving so quickly that it's almost impossible to be competitive when you're making decisions by committee there.
Yes.
To keep up with everything. And that ability to experiment is so valuable and be agile as a business. So, and talking about big wins, after this conversation we're having here today, I'm sitting down with Simon Cowie, who's the Managing Director of By Design in Warwickshire and now Sutton Coldfield, and a chap called Alex Wilcox, who runs Birkbeck Interiors. Because we've just had and we want to sit down and talk about this as a case study because it is so exciting, from the size of property, the scale of property, the success that came out of it, the fees that are just mind-blowing as well, but I'll save it for the other one. But the reason we're sitting down talking about it is because there were things that Simon did that didn't work. And it's really, and we were talking about it and we actually said, okay, we actually need to record this and talk about it because, so I'll give you two examples of this. One would be he had some brochures made. The second one is he had someone come through and document him with behind the scenes content for socials and so on. Now, in this day and age, you go, I better know which one of those worked and which ones didn't, and it was the other way around. The brochures literally sold the house and have wanted some serious instructions off the back of it, and he closed the door on the chap who was doing the behind the scenes stuff. It just wasn't working. Wow. And that is amazing. Firstly, it's not what you think, and secondly, Simon has that complete freedom and creative license, and he is very marketing and design led anyway as an individual, but to experiment and say, okay, well that worked, I'll do more of it. That didn't, I'll stop it. But if you're, and I've experienced this, as have you, I'm sure, in bigger businesses where those decisions can take months, can literally be made on a 5-minute car journey. You go, I'm not going to do that anymore. Okay, I've decided that. Yeah. And I think that's a
really
bit of a superpower.
It's really interesting, and that vanity versus sanity, isn't it? I think this will work.
Yeah.
And ignoring the proof of concept.
Yeah.
That, you know, we all go there. Look, we've all done videos and seen videos where we've gone, that's going to be amazing. That's going to blow everybody apart. And then you play it and everyone goes, well, I mean, it's nice, but what's it actually doing? Is it going to sell the house? It's not really. I mean, it makes you look good, and I'm sure you enjoy doing it, but it's not really going to sell my house, is it? And we've all done that. We've all been there. And then someone's turned around and gone, I love the fit of this brochure, isn't it beautiful? And you know what? I go to a house and I'm viewing the property and I touch and feel a brochure that's really nice, and I'm thinking, yeah, everything about this journey is quality. Yeah. Then you know, you've hit upon a formula. We don't do brochures, but that's not to say that we won't for the right property. If there's a property of a certain calibre, we're talking to an owner of a very large £12 million small country estate, this beautiful property. He will be getting a brochure for his house because it warrants it. But if somebody with a £700,000-800,000 property that's very, very beautiful says, yeah, I want a brochure, then fine, we'll do a brochure for that as well. But if a partner agent turns around and goes, I want brochure for all my properties, fine. Yeah. You can have this as up to you, it's entirely up to you. We don't want to stop you from doing it. We're not dictating, we're here to empower you to run your business as you see fit. You can learn from some of the lessons we've had, but at the same time, we don't know your patch in the way that you do. We don't know your client base in the way that you do, or your buyer base in the way that you do. That's why you are the person in your patch. So I mean, you've got to be, agile's the word, isn't it, really? You've got to be able and willing to be flexible as much as you possibly can.
So when we did the Along the Towpath, you asked me when we were going along, I didn't give you a very good answer for a controversial opinion on something. So two things, I'm going to reverse that steamroller back over you and ask you for a controversial opinion on something, because I think it's a good question. It's one that needs a little bit of thought given to, perhaps. Especially because it's sort of how spicy do you go? Do you want to get cancelled or do you want to get people listening to the
How
episode?
career defining do I want this moment to be? Ending or elevating? Yeah.
I think I told you about that Opus software the other day where it clips down certain things.
Yeah, I mean, I've just done everything on that now.
No, knowing I like it, will clip the one bit that's unrepeatable and then gets sent out on socials. So do you have a particularly or not particularly controversial opinion about estate agency, the industry, where we're going, what we're doing, that's worth sharing?
It's one of those, isn't it? I mean, how controversial do you want to be? I don't think it's. I think you and I talked about this, and I'm going to stick with it actually. But it's my time to talk now. So, but I think we are in an echo chamber, I think is the phrase that you used, and I really liked it, so I've been using it a lot since. And it is that world that we're in, that we talk to a lot of the same people, and we say not a lot of the same stuff, because I love the content in the world. If you go onto LinkedIn, right, and you look at do your research and you follow the people that everyone else is following, you're sort of almost dragged along down a path that is perhaps a little unfair to you. So when the world started to get a little bit more, to me personally, a little bit more open in the world of estate agency, when Tom Panos sort of crashed onto the scene and started taking us all by surprise with his very aggressive approach to agency.
Great.
And I remember it was Sanj Fest up at Doncaster Racecourse, and there was a whole day of stuff, and then Tom came on at the end, and I remember Tom got onto the stage and he stood there with it's just the most enormous presence, isn't he? And he said, "Mr. and Mrs. Vendor, how do you expect me to get 100% of the price that you want if you won't let me use 100% of the marketing tools available to me?" And the room just went, oh, wow. It was like it was like 1,000 people in that room.
Wow.
And it just, you could hear a pin drop, because all of a sudden somebody's come to you with something new and a completely different approach. That was about for sale boards. It's like, if you're saying no to a for sale board, you want 100% of your price, you've got to let me do my job, right? And for years we've gone, oh, you've got to let me have a for sale board up, because, well, why? All it does is advertise your brand. Yeah, I know, but it might help. Tom's all of a sudden come up with a phrase, a sentence that's made us absolutely pass that up in a beautiful way. So then started the movement, didn't it? And the Australians came over and they taught us a thing or two, the Josh Vegans of this world and the Alexander Phillipses and etc. And we started to see this wave of experts appear. And my God, the learnings and the content and people sort of clipped onto coattails and they started to grow off the back of it, and it was amazing. And Matt Giggs, fantastic stuff we learned from him. Stephen Brown, been doing it for years, but all of a sudden being able to present himself in a new way. And the old school agents, the agency trainers have been around for a while. And I remember seeing a post on LinkedIn that Chris Watkins said. Loads of name drops in here, great for the tagging on LinkedIn later. But we saw this wonderful little thing saying, I can count the number of estate agency trainers on one hand. Why is that? And I watched it and I thought, you've literally just opened a door, and no one can safeguard who comes through that door now. And the swathe of people who are consultants, advisors to the industry, I can boost this, SEO that, social media this, and you look and you go, my God, the noise.
Yeah.
It's so deafening.
Yeah.
Who the hell do I listen to?
Yeah.
And now you've got people prop tech wise coming in and going, I can revolutionise your estate agency.
Yeah.
Okay, when was the last time you sold a house?
Yeah.
You haven't, have you? And all of a sudden you've got so many people giving advice, it's impossible to work your way through it. So you don't have to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning every morning and start work. You don't have to be a member of the 5 a.m. club. You don't have to only do social media like this, you just got to do what works for you. But you've got to accept that failure isn't the end of the journey, it's the beginning of every journey, the beginning of the next journey.
Yeah.
And I think it's not controversial, perhaps, but when you lift your head from I have this idea about a four walls syndrome. You only know the world that you're in unless you lift yourself out of it and look around you.
Yeah.
Now, people stand up and look around and go, oh, this is amazing, isn't it? There's so much advice out here. And by the end of it, they're like, I'm going to get back in my box because I don't know what to do anymore.
Yeah.
And they get back in and they go, oh, just stick to what I know.
Yeah.
And I think the divide is getting greater between good and not so good. And I think there are amazingly talented agents now who are not afforded the luxury of growth because they just don't know where to look. And this comes down to niches within niches and all that sort of thing, because frankly, as a new agent entering the industry, if you don't know about all these agency trainers and advisors and that sort of thing, that's fine. You can go and find out some great content online. But if you're a business owner, who do you talk to? And between those two people, who is the person you advise? So you go, well, that person tells me how to win higher fees. That person tells me how to post on social media. That person tells me I'm doing everything wrong. And this person tells me I'm doing everything right. And what the hell do I do? So I think and this is why I started along the towpath, because I wanted to unpick that a little bit, because and why you guys do what we're doing now, because it's a niche, it's a demographic within our market that we're focusing on. And I think that there needs to be more of that. Everybody is an expert in our industry right now, and it needs to be drilled down into. There's so many people who want to get into the market we're in. My God, there's so many people who go, I want to advise those people. Can I come and speak to you because I want to advise the people like you? I said, no, you're not the right person for it. You don't know the things we know. And if you don't know that, how are you going to teach me anything? So it's, I think, controversial, probably not, more of just an observation than anything else. But I think we are so awash with experts and advisors and specialists and people who can give us a good opinion on what good looks like, that I think there needs to be something that somebody has somewhere, I don't know what it is, somebody far better and more intelligent than me, can sit down and give people guidance as to, right, that's not the route for you. It's almost like an unregulated load of advice, isn't it? You know? And it's
how do you sift through that?
It's a nightmare.
It's advice, and it's also sort of products and services as well. So I can really relate to that. It's really pertinent, actually, you say that, because we've got a new licensee joining us in By Design, and he's a very, very thorough individual, and he's gone and researched everything, and he'd been talking to like marketing companies. And I'm thinking that's a sort of a slightly funny thing to do, but anyway, he had, and this marketing company was wanted to charge him £4,000 for some work. And I said, okay, well, let's get into this and let's look through it. There was nothing in there that was genuinely nothing that was adding any value. I said, it's completely up to you, but I really wouldn't advise you do this. And there's been 2 or 3 things since. I said, I'm starting to sound like a broken record here. I don't think you need any of this. I think that this is all, it's a bit like when you take your car to the garage and they go, whatever it isn't
all your problems.
It's going to cost you a fair bit, but it'll solve all your problems. And it's a little bit like that sometimes. And my conversation with this guy, I said, I'm really sorry because I do sound like a broken record, but I don't think you don't need to spend that money.
It's really hard as well when you're advising people, because you don't want to come across as a bit of almost a narcissist. I'm right, you're wrong, you don't know what you're doing. No, you don't need any of this stuff. I know you've got a nice idea, but it's not going to work for you. Well, actually, you are the right person to be advising that person.
Well, one of the cases, I'd spent the money and learned that it didn't work. I was like, look, I've already spent the money for you. Like, you can keep your money that you would have tested and it wouldn't have worked on this. Just please keep it, because I've spent it and it didn't work. But it is a really interesting point. I'll give you the sort of slightly controversial opinion without going too far down the rabbit hole on this that I should have given to you when we did the Along the Towpath, but I'll frame it as a question.
We've had plenty of time to think about it.
I have. I think I texted you on the way home. I was like, I've thought of it, and it's too late. I'll turn around. There was a poll that went round socials recently, and I can't remember who it was from. So apologies, I can't name that. But someone holds a gun to your head and says you've got to choose. You can either keep Rightmove or social media. And so first of all, in a word,
user did that. Was
no,
it you? Oh, right. Okay,
I'll take the credit for whatever I can, but it certainly wasn't me. So first of all, someone's holding the gun to your head on behalf of Chartwell Noble. What are you going to lose, Rightmove or social media?
It was Simon, actually, Simon Gates.
Was it?
Did that, yeah, I'm pretty sure it was. So
Sorry, Gates.
shout out to Simon, there we go. What are you going to lose? So, I think it's so tough, isn't it?
Great question.
It's a brilliant question, but it's also one that I resolutely stand behind, and I would stick to socials because we sell houses off the strength. Rightmove has its place, and I'm one of those. This is where the hate mail's going to come. I'm one of these people that doesn't have as big a problem with Rightmove as some others.
Yeah.
I'm actually used correctly, it can be a very valuable tool, and I think I said to you when we last spoke that if you've got all your tools in one place, it's a very valuable exercise to know I would buy an easy life over a difficult life. So I would spend a premium for an easy life.
Yeah.
And if I had 10 different portals that I had to access, now, you know how many portals are out there. Craig, you advertise on most of them.
Yeah.
Europe-wide and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
It's a minefield.
Yeah.
And you've got to try and keep up with them. You've got to make sure that you're relevant on there. It's really tough. So for me, Rightmove, it's not. I don't feel it's the public enemy number one to us personally. I know to other agents it is, and I know that some practices, offend and upset, and I get it, and I don't. I'm not going to go down that route. I'm not a naysayer on all things Rightmove. So I think that if I had a landscape where there's 100 different portals, or 10 different portals, or 15 different portals, and they all charge a few £100s each a month, then that cost is intrinsically higher by the time you're done, depending on what your deal is. But also you've got to try and keep up with that. But I don't know where my audience is over those 10. So am I here? Am I there? I've got to do all of them. Yeah. Whereas at least I know I've got effectively the biggest shop window, and they're holding that to ransom. They're monetizing it. Well, it's supply and demand, my friends. That's the basics of economy. There's nothing we can do about that. So you've got to work out how to not be offended by it, but use the problem. Michael Caine's famous line: use the difficulty. There's nothing you can do about it. You can do petition after Facebook group after interview. Find a way around the problem or use it. So come off of it or use it. That's a whole day of doing what we're doing right now to pick that apart. The way that we got around something that we find as frustrating as the very large bill that is Rightmove, is we charge for it. We don't lower our fee. We don't compromise on fees. Utility bills are too high as well. We don't moan about that. We just get on with it because we haven't got a choice. Minimum wage, PAYE, national insurance. All these things are massive costs now. So now we know that our business model demands that we have to secure fees of a certain amount. Now I know it's not as easy as that for other people, but you can't just kick Rightmove into touch because it's too expensive. You've got to work out a way around that. So going back to the question, would I ditch Rightmove because it's a run for the hills? Thank God I don't have to worry about that anymore. That wouldn't be why I ditched it. I would favour social media because I think it's much more personal. It's a two-way conversation. We have the luxury of groups that are very niche to our niche market. So people who want farm small holdings, fields, equestrian properties, etc. There is always 5, 10, 20 times a day somebody is putting something on there. I am looking for this. And 9 times out of 10, they're not anonymous. And you can write them a message and you can go, here's a link to our website. Tell me what you're looking for. I'll register you. You can really become an actual expert. Now we've got a competitor in our patch who was selling a house that we really wanted to sell. We couldn't get in there. We had a valuation, we couldn't win it. Later turned out that they were friends with the person who owns the estate agency. So we were never going to get the job. And we've all been through it, it happens. But that annoyed me. So I thought, right, how childish can I be? Well, no, don't be childish, be professional. Life lesson, everyone.
Why break the habit of a lifetime?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So what I did is I kept an eye on the local Facebook group, and somebody said, I have a budget of X and Y, and I want this type of house, and I've seen everything on Rightmove, and the standard response. And I said, well, actually, you've seen everything on Rightmove, but have you seen this house? And I took that property, it was being marketed with another estate agent, and I put the link into that group, and I said, have you looked at this property? Because I can assure you, it's a lot bigger than it looks, it's prettier than it looks, and actually, do you know what? I think it might actually be something you're looking for. Tagged in the estate agent that was selling it, and said, get in touch with them. And now they didn't go on to sell that house, but the agent responded saying, oh, thank you, that's so lovely, and how very kind of you, and it's lovely, that we're all supporting our clients together and all the rest of it. Private message, what the bloody hell do you think you're doing? So, hey, look, play the game, hate the game. But it was like, do you know what? Why aren't you watching these Facebook groups? Why are you doing it?
Yeah.
Why? Your market is there.
Yeah.
It's put its hand in the air and said, I'm sat here and I've got a problem. Can you solve it for me? And then maybe once or twice a week in these groups, there's a little line saying, I'm not going to deal with estate agents because they're a waste of time. You're right. Because they're not in the group. Because they're not sitting there going, I can help you with this. Well, what's really interesting is when someone in these local community groups, so the village of, whatever, they say, who do you recommend as an estate agent? And the list from all the people who've had good experiences, every now and then they go, whatever you do, don't use X, Y, and Z. But the list is usually and nearly always small, independent, local agents who have a personal connection and can provide a service level that is slightly different. Because A, they're not on, the others aren't on the social media, but B, they've done a bloody good job. And it's personal. So I think if you're an independent and you're an agent that's sort of such the world that we're talking about, I think leverage right, social media, does it solve your problems? No, but my goodness me, it gets you deals. And you can sell houses without using the portals at all. We sell lots of houses without using portals.
Yeah. It's such an interesting subject, isn't it? And it's as well, there's sort of the disparity between perception and reality in terms of what Rightmove does in the agent's mind in selling houses. Like you say, you've sold houses through social media. And then there's also the ability to win a listing if you didn't have Rightmove and other agents holding that against you. And there's that element that colours it in as well, which is really interesting. So no, it's... by the way, did you see what I did there? Is you've asked me for a controversial opinion. I didn't give you one, and I've asked you twice. so that's very kind.
Very skilled.
So I can throw you under the bus with any controversial opinions. But no, I thought that one. I'm actually really pleased it was Simon Gates that came up with the question, because it is such a thought-provoking one.
It is,
and it does lead you into so many different conversations.
It really does.
Thought processes that it's really valuable. Okay. So we're coming to the end of the episode now as well, which just leaves me to ask you our customary ridiculous question, which, do you know what? Turns out we've been getting wrong every single episode without fail. Matt,
I saw that. Yeah, somebody picked up on that the other day.
Yeah. I think Matt once very flatteringly called it an algorithm. I'm not sure it counts as an algorithm, but it is, of course, to ask you. Every one of our guests on this channel is a property porn star in their own right, but everyone has their porn star names, whether they know it or not, and that is, it turns out, actually comprised of your mother's maiden name and your first pet's name, which probably explains why I think Matt glitched out at the start, because he knew he had a great one, and he set the rules so he could win it. Yeah, which I quite admire him for. So it's a combination of your mother's maiden name and your first pet's name.
So the first pet was a cat called Dookie.
We're on to a great start. So fantastic.
That's better.
Keep going.
Yeah. And my mother's maiden name is Gaywood.
Stop it.
It just,
Dookie Gaywood.
Dookie Gaywood. I think you may have a winner.
God, we might have a winner.
Yeah.
Finally.
I don't wear it across my back.
What's that tattoo you got?
Just on the upper arm, It's for special occasions.
Well, that's fantastic.
Yeah. So I was quite looking forward to that moment.
Wow.
Worth the journey.
Worth the journey just for that. Top of the leaderboard, straight in there.
Top of the leaderboard.
Well, congratulations. We don't have a cup or anything, but I feel like you should probably take one home.
Yeah, I'll just take the paddle back.
Well, awesome. Ross, that has been such an interesting conversation. I feel like one of these people that almost we try and keep these episodes to roughly an hour, but I feel like we could talk about so many of these subjects for so long because you get right into some really meaty stuff. So maybe we'll have to do a round 2 at some point as well, which would be fun.
So. Yeah.
But it just leaves me to say thank you so much for making the journey here, spending the time and sharing so much information. I really, really appreciate it. And congratulations on getting top of the leaderboard there as well. A nice note to end on.
Well done.
Ross, thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
And thank you for watching or listening to this episode of Property Porn Stars. We really appreciate it. And we'll catch you in the next episode.